Hi, this is Matt Towers with CPA.com, product lead for assurance, and I am joined today by Carolyn Newman from Automation. Welcome, Carolyn.
Hi, Matt. Thanks for having me on.
I'm excited to have you on because we want to talk a little bit about analytics today. So I know you were recently on a podcast. It's actually kind of an exciting podcast that's going on right now with the Journal of Accountancy around audit evolution in action. And so we want to talk a little bit about that experience and get into some other subject matter around data analytics, I think, in our conversation. I kind of want to start, though, by talking a little bit about some of the tools that are available today and kind of your take as somebody who's been around data analytics for a while. I know at CPA.com, we have a product called OnPoint Analytics AI. It's a cloud-based analytics tool. That's intended to help firms kind of have a simple path to adopting data analytics into every audit at the beginning of the audit. There are other cloud-based analytics tools that are out there as well, and they kind of serve a different and complementary purpose to the application of data analytics for products like Caseware's IDEA. So I don't know if you could take a moment to kind of help people understand, like, what's maybe how are both different types of analytics tools valuable to the audit, and how are they complementary?
Okay, so the thing about analytics is that it's tool driven. The goal, I think, for auditors and for a lot of people that want to get good results using analytics is for it to be automated and integrated, exception based, which helps you identify higher risk areas. And so I can remember about 3 years ago, we're the distributor for IDEA, and Caseware owns IDEA. And so we were in Toronto, and they showed us this analytics AI that they wanted to do, and how automated it would be, and how you can quickly find, the exceptions and the risky transactions and that sort of thing. And I got so excited because, let me tell you, for almost 30 years pushing data analytics, we went from what is it to, this is all the things you can do with it. And I saw the use of the analytics AI, and there are other ones that do, AI type of things, as a real way to get the auditors using analytics and exception-based testing in a more automated way. You got to use the tool that meets the need. And the need, I think, that these front end tools meets is, number one, getting data, because you can't, without ingesting the data, you really can't do your analysis. So I think along the way, that's going to make that easier for all auditors. Once the data is in, then through the front end packages, you can have your starting point. If you want to do a deeper dive, then you need a more sophisticated tool, or one that can take that data and go beyond. And I also understand that a lot of the new ones mostly focus on general ledger. The general ledger is the backbone, of any company's accounting information system that generates the financial statement. So that's definitely the best way to start. But there's so much more that enters into a company's financials and results and their goals. And so having higher level tools like IDEA can help make the auditor go further and go beyond, and really come up with the right answers and the right insights for their clients.
Yeah, data driven. I tell you, firms are talking about this more and more. I think there's a ton of interest in a lot of the, I'll call them these, again, cloud-based analytics tools. But yet still, I think most of the firms I talk to, they're still using a lot of Excel. They've created a lot of these different calculations in Excel. And, I think the real value that I'm hearing from people when they start to leverage these kind of more dedicated analytics tools is around kind of how it helps them focus their audit efforts and their audit activity, excuse me.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm wondering, from your perspective, what are some of the other benefits that firms can realize when they start to invest in taking a more analytics-based approach earlier on and maybe throughout their audit process?
Well, what immediately comes to mind is, and nobody's going to realize this, I don't think, is when you are really good at analytics, you can look at your own data. You can look at information across your firm, all clients that are in this industry, say, and the learning that you can do from that type of analytics can really be an enhancement, for a firm. So the next thing I think is just impressing your client. They expect, well, actually there's, I think, an expectation gap, not just the third parties, the stakeholders who expect that when the audit's done, everything's really clean and no fraud. Yeah, right. But the client sees you as not only accounting expert, but since you're going to be in their books and records, you need to be expert in their business too. And analytics just helps you get there so much faster, because you can access all the data that's available and do analysis. Can you do that in Excel? Yeah. But I can tell you, we have done projects for clients, and we've also, trained them in how to do this that took, maybe 20 hours in Excel, and we can crystallize it into something where Ideal will do it in like 5 minutes. So it's a real time saver, and you just immediately eliminate the risk of crashing your data and corrupting and not being able to prove the answer that you got.
I know we're excited at CPA.com about how analytics AI is actually built into the workflow for on-point audit, and this is essentially set up to be, again, ingrained into how the audit approach even takes place. It's kind of like removing some of the barriers to entry for firms who maybe aren't as familiar with analytics, cloud-based analytics, or even just in general, more dedicated analytics tools that are out there. And I know I mentioned this in the introduction when we were talking, that you were on a Journal of Accountancy podcast recently, and you were joined by John Cardiello from Schneider Downs. You guys talked about this subject, right? Data analytics in the audit.
Right.
And I think in your final comments when the podcast was closing, you had talked about how important it is for auditors to get educated on analytics, to kind of add an extra level of assurance and benefit for clients. And you even just mentioned now some of that kind of wow factor or added benefit to the client that the auditor can provide. So I think maybe a good way for us to wrap up this quick conversation is if you can think of any ways, any helpful tips for firms who have a limited knowledge and experience today on using dedicated analytics tools. What can they do to maybe get on track, get educated around these tools in the audit?
Well, I think just about every provider has some sort of YouTube channel where there's little walkthroughs. Of course, there's always the training. We've been doing online training since before you had to be online to do training, and it's hands-on. So just find ways to actually touch the data and use the tools so that you can see what happens when you run a query or create a report for a client. A trend now is visualization. So you don't want to show a pretty picture to your client if you're not confident that everything that you're putting into that is correct. And that's where the power of the analytics tools comes into play. So I think to answer your question, if you have a tool, contact the vendor, find out what they have available. There's tons of free stuff, I think, and then the courses should be pretty good, and they allow CPE. So kill two birds with one stone, right? Like was mentioned by John Cardiello, they actually have an internal group. So it helps to, the larger the firm, the more you can afford to do this, but it helps to incentivize the specialist people, the ones to become champions that can just, make it easier for the ones new to the process. And you'll know after, they will know after the first 2 or 3 times working with people, which ones get it, and want to go further, and which ones maybe ought to be reading leases or something different. But I think that just being aware of what's out there, and then when you do want to use a tool, that you invest properly in the people, for the training. So I just can't emphasize enough the importance of training, even if it's on the job training. It just takes you further and further with quality use of these tools.
I'll add one additional thought from firms I've talked to on this subject. And I think another thing that can help the firm as a whole improve their knowledge and experience is if the firm can identify a person or two. You almost have to find somebody who really is a curious and a data-driven person, somebody who's going to really have a fire in the belly on this subject, who really wants to understand, like, what can we learn through the data. I think visualization is a really good call too, because a lot of times it makes it easier to be able to, like, for instance, see outliers and be able to, like, start looking at, what does this outlier mean? Why is this here? And again, the whole point of these various tools, not completely the only point, but one of the major points is it helps with focus, right? Like, where are the areas that the auditor should really be digging in a little bit more?
Yeah.
Yeah.
To me, it's about time. The time savings and the higher quality, the more deeper insights that you can do for your client. And as I started to say about the general ledger, that's just the starting point.
Right.
The ability to go into operational data, even data in the cloud, in big data type of things, is going to make you a better and stronger consultant to the client, which that's what they want. Yes, they need to have the audit, but they really are expecting you to help them, with good insights and good advice. And that time savings of having strong analytics tools and abilities frees you up to be able to do that, and feeds you the information you use in order to do it.
Yeah, and I think that there's a basic trend that even though an audit is really a compliance-driven service, that there should be value add, that there should be some things that the audit firm is doing to be able to, not just be more competitive, but be more valuable to the client. And, analytics is certainly one of the cornerstones towards getting more insight and more, value to the client as a result. So I would encourage those listening here, if you haven't checked out the Audit Evolution in Action podcast series in the Journal of Accountancy, to go do that. The conversation with Carolyn and John was the second in the series. And so it's really worth listening to, and we're excited about that series. Carolyn, thank you for joining me. This has been a fun, quick catch-up conversation with you. I'm excited to kind of see where things continue to go with data analytics. And for now, I just want to say thanks and appreciate your time.
Thanks for having me, Matt. It's just so exciting what's going to be done in the future with data analytics.
I agree completely. And thanks, everybody, for listening in.